You yourself and I.
You can go ahead and make all the decisions. We don't care.
But if they don't, they'll be down Saturday. Maryland, at Maryland.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a quorum at the table. We're back in session.
Cal and Rod are in the kitchen speaking.
Well, we'll see what we can do with that. The next item on the agenda is 5B, electrical lighting improvement bids. Danny, are you ready to talk to us about electrical lighting improvement bids?
No, sir, I'm not. That's a Scott Connell item.
So we need to find Scott now.
We got a screen that's got people moving on it.
Oh, great. Can we get Scott to move on it?
He's on the phone.
Okay. And he's the next one too, the access control.
I can attempt.
Well,
Who's on first?
But you do have Scott's report. You've got 3 different areas that was being improved. First string somewhere. You're up.
Oh, okay. On our lighting?
Yes, the lighting.
Okay. All right. In your packet, there,
Page 66.
Page 66, yes, sort of a lengthy memo, and I wanted to give you the history at hand here. We talked about this December 23rd and January 27th. So this is the 3 different electrical components that we're bidding out. One would be the, and then we set priorities on them. I'm sorry,
Yes,
catching
yes.
up here a little bit.
Yeah.
So what you have before you is, as per discussion, our Tetra Tech's electrical engineer, Jason, who's here today, to answer any technical questions and things. They went back and talked with Chuck Bentley and reviewed and did some value engineering and came up with the options and redesigned some things. And we have a new quote from Bentley Electric that's enclosed here. Basically, the Gateway Boulevard was reduced substantially due to some cost savings, which I'll let Jason explain.
Page 68.
On page 68, yes. Griffin Drive, there's some alternates in there. Griffin Drive was the lighting back behind the new pathway, was the original intent. And again, some value engineering was done in there, and the cost for doing LED upgrading. And an alternate also to Griffin Drive was to light the area back behind Hampton Park subdivision as you go out towards 82 on the north side or west side. And then the third was the Sherman soccer fields. We had a base bid, and then what was done to redesign that after, again, talking with the contractor and changing out some components and things. In a nutshell, recommending here on Gateway Boulevard that, as I say, in the interest of time, for the road rehab in segment 1, that we proceed with this, and so we can, and the money is available, the funding. Griffin Drive, we had $160,000 in the capital improvement budget for the pathway and lighting, if you will, during the construction and design of all that. The pathway, the county required us to widen it and lengthen it a little bit, and we threw in the extra 3 crossings we had done earlier in the year, so we used up a majority of that budget. So there's not a lot of money left for lighting in there. And then the Sherman soccer fields, we talked about making the repairs. We have some carryover money from last year. The recommendation right now is to, let's upgrade and repair the older fields, 1, 2, and 3, and do some modifications on the ballast cabinets on the other fields. And that'll be considered phase 1. Again, I think we have the money in the budget to do that first phase, which is the most needed at this time, so. Also included in here is all the proposals dated January 25th from Bentley Electric. And you can follow the email chain, the conversations with the gents from Tetra Tech. So, it's a little involved. It's a little, deep in trying to figure it all out. But hopefully I boiled it down to you and something that's understandable, and technical questions and things and direct communication with Chuck Bentley were handled through Tetra Tech's design engineers, and Jason's present to answer any technical questions.
Thank you, Scott. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take these one at a time, since there are some complexities in here. And we previously agreed that the lighting improvements on Gateway Boulevard were the most important, so that we could get those done and get the road turned over. Jason, did you have a conversation that you'd like to talk to us about the Gateway Boulevard that had such a huge reduction in the price?
Yeah, speaking with Chuck, he had some knowledge that no one else would have known about, having the existing conduits and wires still being intact. So his knowledge of that was able to save us from having to replace stuff that is underground, and at the original project we just thought we wouldn't have to replace. So that's really where all the substantial savings came from.
Do you have any hesitation in our approving tonight a contract with Bentley for $77,800?
No.
All right,
So moved.
thank you.
Second, I'd like to discuss something on that.
That's right, we have a motion and a second. Ladies, you made the motion, do you have questions?
I do not.
I just want to ask one question. Is that going to be LED lighting?
That is LED lighting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, the original quote was $52,800 higher than this, is that what we're saying?
No.
I'm reading page 67 page 67 of the agenda, and it says a savings of $52,800. Can you,
Yes, the original quote was 52,000 more.
so you've reduced the original quote by 52,000?
Correct.
So there's 10 lights involved, right?
Yes.
Oh, there's 10
10 poles,
10 poles?
20 lights.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking at $3,500 per light, or $7,000 a pole. Is that ballpark? Is that typical in the industry? With 77,000 divided by 10, is that typical in the industry per pole?
These poles are more expensive than other poles, as they're frangible base. So it's a normal pole that you could just sink into the ground. Those are the cheapest. However, these poles, because of the proximity to the road and being in the median, we needed to go with the frangible base. They're more expensive. So that price for 2 lights and a frangible base pole, that is pretty typical.
That's typical. Okay, that's all I needed to ask on this one item.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further question about the contract with Bentley Electric on Gateway Boulevard? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0. Thank you very much. Next is Griffin Drive. And Scott, you indicated that there were some savings. Savings isn't exactly the right word. Funds left over from last year that you wanted to use on some of this. Do I have that correct?
No, that was for the
Sorry.
field lighting, the soccer
I'm
field.
sorry.
Yeah,
Excuse-
not Griffin Drive.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Okay, what is your recommendation for Griffin Drive?
Well, the budget was 160,000, of which 188 was already spent on the pathway and things. So we're deficient there. in the base bid for the lighting on the east side of the road was $118,680. And that's using some of the existing poles that we're pulling off of the Gateway Boulevard area and bringing over and utilizing those concrete poles over again instead of storing them for replacements elsewhere later on. And then utilizing the existing fixtures, if I recall. But I'll let you get into the details.
We bid out a couple options where reusing some of the existing lights, providing new lights, providing the upgrade to do LED lights. So the base bid was to reuse the 10 poles we're pulling out from Gateway Boulevard and reuse those 10 lights that were on those poles before to try to bring the price down as low as possible. And then we had the adders to provide new poles or provide new lights or LED lights and all those adders.
And this is the area that we thought WCI was gonna take care of, and they have told us they're not. Is that correct?
No.
Oh, thank you, please.
No,
Please help.
please correct. This is the area that is coming from the park and running north up to Magnolia, Magnolia Lakes.
Okay.
It's in front of those 3 subdivisions. That's the base bid. The alternate bid, as we call it, would be the other side of the road going out towards 82, back behind Hampton Park, behind the sidewalk. 2 years ago, when we looked at the DRI and the DOs and what was required or not of WCI, the requirement was to install the sidewalk, but not the light poles.
Well, that's where I got confused. I mean, we thought that both were involved in there, only the sidewalks. were
Right, we
involved.
did the research and determined it was sidewalk only as their responsibility.
Okay.
Lee,
Can I,
please.
how many lights are you talking about, light poles are you talking about on the east side?
That'd be the first side.
Yeah, it's 10 new poles. I'm sorry, we'll relocate 10 existing poles, and there'll have to be 6 new poles, so 16
So you're
total.
talking about 16 total? And what is the alternate bid one of $48,140? What is that?
That's the lighting on the west side, so it's the 8 additional new lights and poles. That's the adder to do the other side of the.
Behind Hampton Park.
Okay.
Look
'cause-
at page 70.
Okay. Oops. One more.
That's what you're reading.
Sorry.
All right, yeah.
So Scott, okay, so I think what we did, when this project was originally approved, it was approved with the sidewalk and the lighting. Am I correct?
That was the intent, yes.
And then, when you put the crosswalks in, that came out of that project money?
It did. That's where it was
Okay.
allocated. The 3 crosswalks.
I didn't think we voted for it to come out of that.
Pardon me?
I didn't think we voted for it to come out of that project money. I thought that was something else, but.
That's where it has been allocated.
I thought that the crosswalk,
Well,
that
that
was
was-
going to be a part of the project anyway,
I don't know.
wasn't it? The crosswalk? Am I wrong?
That's where Stephen allocated the money.
Okay.
All right.
And that was about, well, here, I can look that up in just a moment.
At any rate, with Griffin Drive, I guess the point is, no matter what we decide to do, we have to reallocate funds to do it. Is that correct? Because we're over budget on just the sidewalk and the pathway?
We need to allocate funds if we decide to do it.
Yes.
Right.
If
that's
we
what-
decide to do it.
That's correct.
That's the point.
That's one of my concerns, is the fact that we just don't have the funds in the budget in the in the fixed asset reserve allocated to this. And I've got a couple of other concerns too, Bill.
Just one second.
Did Stephen have anything to put towards this, or to any, where he wanted, so what is it? So at the end of the day,
We'll find it.
Yeah, well, if we decide to do it, we'll have to find it, but let's hear what Rod's other concerns are.
Yeah, bigger picture, that we talked about the DRI, and this is a WCI section of road that we're talking about for this lighting, correct?
That's correct.
And the sidewalk that you were talking about that was part of the DRI, that was a WCI requirement to install the sidewalk.
Yes.
Is that the sidewalk that we finished up installing, or which sidewalk are we talking about?
Okay, I'll back up. The request that the board approved was to put in a new pathway on the east side of the roadway,
Mhm.
from the park up to Magnolia Lakes.
Yes.
That's new. That's now an 8-foot wide asphaltic meandering pathway
Mhm.
in front of all those communities. So that's the east side, and that's where the 16 lights, or take 16 poles to light
That's what
that
cost
strip.
us $160,000.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
And then the other area would be the west side, picking up where the lights end right now, along back behind Silver Lakes, and then carrying that towards 82, behind Hampton Park, where WCI, under the DRI requirements, installed a sidewalk, concrete sidewalk.
Okay.
But they weren't required to do any lighting. So we bid out, they designed and we bid out what that lighting value was as another alternate. And that's, I don't know how many fixtures or light poles go in there.
Okay.
Eight poles.
I ought to be asking this question of WCI, but if the roads are going to be in the process of being turned over in the next, in 6 months' time, I'm assuming that Lee County, wouldn't Lee County be concerned that the road's being turned over without lights on it?
I don't recall reading that in the white paper or in the agreement.
I mean, whoever puts the lights in, whether we put them in or whether WCI put them in, or maybe we can do it in a joint deal or something. I'm looking at it from Lee County's point of view. Would they accept those roads in the state they're in without lighting? Just because the DRI says they don't need them?
Again, I don't recall it in the work that the committee did for road turnover ever being.
We didn't do WCI stuff.
Danny, do you have any thoughts on that, please?
No, I mean, when you said outside of the DRI, I don't see how they could require it if it wasn't a requirement of the DRI. For them to
Okay.
go back, that would govern in this
I'm just
case.
looking, yes, that's what I'm saying. I mean, the proposal is for us to spend, how much was it, Scott? $116,000 on these lights
Or more.
on the back of the residence. And I'm thinking, okay, well, why would that, why would they not be lit in the first place as part of the WCI development?
You could certainly ask WCI as a matter of health and safety.
I would like to, but.
What?
Absolutely.
I don't know why we're discussing that.
Hmm?
I don't know why we're discussing the lights on the west side. The WCI isn't built up yet, hasn't finished out, going up to 82.
What I'm saying, is
So
that
why would we be putting lights up there?
because it's their section of road, the way I understand it, and therefore I would have thought, before we spend $116,000 of our residents' money, I'm just asking the question, why didn't WCI do it?
What is it?
And remember, the 116,000 plus an additional 48, we're looking at $170,000 for lights on that side, on the Hampton Park side. The other 118 is the other side of the road, like the Magnolia Lake side of the road. So we're talking about a lot of money
We
in
are.
that section of roadway.
Can I just correct you on that? It would be the 116 or the 118,000, whichever option you wanna pick. You know, there's a difference on the base of maybe 2,000 or 3,000 between some of the options. The additional lights on the west are only an adder of 48,000. So you would have the 116 plus the 48 for the entire project.
Okay. So I misunderstood what this was.
Mr. Chairman, here's what I'd like to say on this. I feel uncomfortable voting on this particular item number 2 today. I'd like the district to at least put something in writing as to what our responsibilities are and whether WCI are prepared to discuss this with us before we just plow ahead and vote on this thing. I'm prepared to vote on the items 1 and 3, but not on number 2.
Margaret, does that make sense to you?
Yes, I'm in agreement with that.
Pam, are you comfortable doing it that way?
Well, we can. I don't understand why we are even considering putting lights on the west side of Griffin Drive. So I think that we should be basically talking about something that we had talked about prior and approved, and that's the lights on the east side from Magnolia Lakes down to the school. I don't know why that would be even a consideration for us to put out money on the west side of Griffin Drive.
Mr. Manager, I'm not gonna lay this on Scott, because Scott's not gonna be here, but can you, between now and the next meeting, put together the strongest rationale that you can for why we should spend any money on lights on that side of Griffin Drive? And I'm ready to honor Mr. Senior's request that we defer this until we have that strong rationale and go on to
But there's also there is a safety issue for us on the east side of, that's what we had approved prior. So I don't know why we can't split that out. I don't know why that's included in,
And that's
in
why I
the
thought these were
discussion.
2 different bids.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't
That's-
allocated any funds for that, Pam.
And
I know we haven't.
If
And
I-
that was the other thing I wanted included in that is, where are we gonna fund this from? And
That's
we
what-
need to come up with funding.
Yeah,
And
so
that's
that's,
another
that's
reason
what
to-
I would like to know.
Yes.
is-
That's
Gil,
another
if
reason
I
to
can
table it.
clarify that.
Okay, Danny?
The section, where the new sidewalk is, let's say that's part A. And the west side in the Hampton Parks area, that's part B. So first of all, the Hampton Parks area on the west side, those 8 lights could not even go unless the other lights went, because it's a continuous run of lights.
Okay.
Second, just a point to make is that I agree with you from that point of Hampton Park is under development still. However, the other thing I'll point out is that entire section of road is within WCI, so I think it is worth that discussion with WCI about the
Okay.
entire section.
Okay.
Also, as far as calls into the district from residents, we have had some of the newer Hampton Park residents inquire about why there's no lighting along that sidewalk behind their subdivision.
Well, they should be asking the developer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're gonna,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
just-
Attorney.
Well, the question is whether or not the board wants to have one other element added to this, to make inquiries of Lee County as to whether or not at the time the roadway segment becomes county-owned, whether or not it would be appropriate for Lee County to engage in any, street lighting or lighting of that roadway segment.
The snow will be flying before we get an answer from them.
Well, those are all great reasons.
Snow will be flying south of Frostproof, Florida, yes.
Okay, we've got a lot more questions than we have answers on this part of Griffin Drive. It needs to be fleshed out a lot more before we're ready to make the tough decisions that it's gonna call for. Let's talk about the soccer field lights. What was that, Scott?
I'm asking Jason for his assistance.
Oh, okay.
All right, we redid the report for the Sherman soccer field, so the bid this time and the previous bid aren't comparing apples to apples, you know, we've got apples and oranges this time. However, so although we increased in price, you're gonna be you would get a much better product with the, you know, the slight increase. Before we were, you know, it was bare minimum, let's see if we can re-secure the existing ones, refurbish them a little bit the best we can, but there was no guarantee of how long it would work. You know, it was just the best we can do to paint it up, really. So on the newest report and the newest bid, which is,
This is on page 69 of the agenda.
Mhm.
which we were able to separate out, you know, the different fields. We were able to, the overall price may have gone up, however, it can be spread out over multiple years. So if you only want to do fields 1 through 3, which were in the most dire repair when we were out there looking at them,
They were hazardous, were they not?
very hazardous. They looked like, there was definitely a safety issue with their structural soundness. So we took care of that as the base bid. Let's fix those. We're actually putting in new lights there and resecuring the way the new lights would be connected to the poles. So that gets us, you know, about $70,000 as the base bid. We're fixing 3 of the fields in the first go.
And what, sorry, Bill.
No, you go ahead.
What follows the base bid 1, 2, and 3 fields? What's next?
So the second alternative is, the second bid is fields 4 and 5. The lighting on field 4 and 5 are structurally connected to the poles in a way that we don't have the concern of them falling like fields 1 through 3. However, after replacement of, you know, fields 1 through 3 with new lights and being reconnected to the poles, it would be nice to follow up with 4 and 5. The lights aren't new either. They are getting older. They don't have as much of a concern as fields 1 through 3. However, they will need to be replaced.
That next year would be a possibility?
Correct.
What's the dollar value on 4 and 5?
4 and 5 is $55,600.
And what follows that?
What follows that can either follow that, or actually, we could bring that in partially to the bids 1 and 2. So that is the electrical ballasts that actually power the lights aren't being replaced. They're in existing enclosures at the base of the poles. Those are in disrepair, but they're not a safety issue. They're not gonna fall down. They're not, you know, aesthetically, they don't look excellent right now. However, that final portion, which is only 7,000, is to go back to all the fields and patch up the enclosures.
If I may, excuse me. If you recall, several months ago, there was a report that some of those ballast cabinets on fields 1 and 2, I believe, were rusted through.
Yeah.
And so we had electrician go through and do some temporary means of
Yeah.
safeting those up. So the kids couldn't get in there, the birds couldn't get in there, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Yep.
you know, we have done that safety step. Also along, if you recall, we went back and did aircraft cable on all the fixtures, on all fields 1 through 5, for a safety factor, so that if one did break away due to rust or whatever, the bolt, or high winds, that it would catch it and wouldn't let it drop. So those are still in place, all those cables.
What happened to the matching grant that we were going after? I know you missed a deadline, didn't you reapply? The guy from Jupiter, did that just fall away, or?
No, they did, the state did not approve us.
Oh, it was actually turned down?
Yeah, there was, I can't remember the specifics, right now, but they did turn us down.
Okay.
So Scott, in your opinion, what do you feel the lights are, what kind of condition the lights at fields 4 and 5 are in?
Well, I know that those were built at a later date, and I'm, you know, I really can't say we've had any, in the last 2.5 years, any repair issues over there,
Okay.
as we have on fields, 2, I believe it was, 1 and 2. So that's why I'm making the recommendation that we go with, repairing fields 1, 2, and 3 at that $70,400, and, including the cabinets, the ballast cabinets on all the poles in fields 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 for another $77,650. However, with that proposal, we are shy from what's remaining in the budget by just under $8,000 to get all that work done.
Mm.
So I leave it up to the board's direction.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation of the operations manager. Is there a motion?
I know that this is a project that we need to seriously consider from a safety standpoint, but again, I'm just gonna ask the question, we're shy of the budget, $7,730 that's needed to do what you're requesting. Where are we going to transfer those funds from?
We can find the money.
Yeah, in a budget this size, you can find that
It'll
with.
be in your fund
Yeah.
balance.
I know, I
She just
guess,
wanted to know.
when
Yeah, I
things,
just
when
don't
things
have it
come
with me.
forward to us, it would be nice
Yeah.
to say, we would like to move this amount into this budget
Yeah,
to
I'll-
cover this.
I agree, Margaret, I totally agree. I think if there was a zero added to that 8,000, I think I'd be more concerned. It's $8,000,
Right, and I don't have a problem approving this, I just,
right?
I'm thinking.
It's the principle of it.
If we're $8,000 over on every project that we do,
Is
we're
it-
gonna be adding a lot of.
It's a good discipline, I'm right with you. But on the other hand, safety is the deal, and
Yes,
I'd be prepared to
exactly.
accept.
I've got a
it.
stamp that, going forward, proposals like this, we'll stamp it and then write where the funds are coming from, how much is left in that budgeted item, and, if more is needed, where it would come from.
That'd
Thank
be
you.
very nice.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Okay, are you making a?
I will make a motion to approve, spending the $78,050 to, refurbish, I guess, I'm gonna use the right word, upgrade the lighting on fields 1, 2, and 3, and modify the ballasts on poles 1 through 9.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further conversation? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0. Thank you very much, Scott. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason. Sure do appreciate it.
Okay. 5C is the access control at the pool and the dog park.
5C, okay, access control at the Commons Pool and the dog park. As you know, we've had some access control issues up at the pool for some time. The computer, the system that's there was an original Honeywell or something, and we changed vendors for our monitoring and servicing of that equipment, and ADT's taken it over, I think a couple years ago. And anyway, the equipment's antiquated and continues to fail, and the computers that operate it are not lasting, and due to a couple things, the harsh environment of the pool and the office, and we had to keep the door open and things like that. So it continues to crash, and then what happens is we can't monitor the access control, the gate. We can't record who's coming in and out, so it's all being done manually as far as letting those that have a card come in. Will come in, they give us a card, the staff goes and verifies that they are legit, the card's active. We used to do that, so now we have a manual system. So along with that, we have the same type of system at the dog park for the two sides, the two doors, if you will. Again, we looked at this a couple weeks ago with ADT on how to integrate the system, how do we take it, up a level. They have a proposal in here to, it's basically in the cloud, it's a web-based environment, and I have a gentleman, Sharif here with ADT, who can answer those technical things. instead of me trying. So, in a nutshell, we are proposing here that we upgrade our system, which is expandable to adding alarm systems and closed-circuit TV monitoring in the future. The dog park can be hooked up through the system on a wireless method through an air card. And looking at whether we purchase it or we lease it, I made the recommendation that we have the lease option. There's an upfront charge, and then there's a monthly fee. But basically, this will help. We won't have a computer to run. We have a laptop that does a dog park, and we have a desktop that did the pool. So we won't need those, because all this will be up in the cloud, and you can do it on your smartphone, you can do it remotely. We'll be able to download, upload all those facilities. So right now, the pool is running manually, and as well as the dog park went down last week, and so we we are able to facilitate the residents at the pool, because it is a manned facility. At the dog park, we have preloaded cards that are still active and can work for those new people that come in. So we are covering the bases. It's a struggle, it's a manual method, and that's why we're proposing, let's bring us up to the current technology and things, and there might be some other options and all, but I've invited Sharif here, who evaluated the system with another gentleman, along with our staff, and he prepared the proposal.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation of the operations manager. How about some questions from the board as to where we're heading on this?
I'll defer to Mr. Stanley.
Is this gentleman from ADT?
Yes, sir.
I'd rather hear from him
I wouldn't
first.
even try to say his last name. 'Cause
That's El Sadiq, Sharif El Sadiq.
I'd like to hear from him before I comment, if that's okay.
Sure.
Do you want to, are you making a presentation, or are you just here to answer questions?
Actually, I do have a presentation ready, but I think there was going to be some time issues, so I just put it on a jump drive. But I could certainly feel free to ask me any questions. Basically, what we're proposing is we take the entire database and the entire software that operates, and we make it all cloud-based. Therefore, there are no issues to deal with when it comes to the handling or addition or deletions from the database locally or of the software, or should Microsoft have to change systems, make patches to their existing Microsoft version that they're using. That completely eliminates or removes that from your hands. However, you still do need means to reach the internet and our redundant servers to make the changes. You will see all three doors as one on one page. It's not going to be all independent. You will have a list of all the people that are allowed to use those doors at whatever times and at whatever dates. You can administer it by time, dates, holiday, whichever way you want, and it could be done remotely from any place. It doesn't have to be done at the actual system panels at all. So it really brings the SIRE system into the 21st century. It's scalable. It could go up to a few hundred doors later on if the needs are increased. But pretty much the issue we had was, well, how do we get internet capability at the dog park? Because there was absolutely nothing there. So we recommended the use of a cell router that involves an air cards, which introduces a monthly cost to that. However, it was kind of weighing what is less expensive. We bring Comcast or Verizon to put internet and lay down the fiber, or do we just use the air card for now and later on we change it? So I believe Scott thought the best option was to go with the air card for now instead of bringing, internet or laying down fiber, which might cost quite a bit more.
Can you tell me how the residents get in? What are they using, the same kind of card, or?
There's a card. What is the initials of that card?
Currently, there are HID cards that you are using. And when I looked at them, they will be compatible with the system. We are not changing any of the actual readers. We are basically just addressing the brains or the actual system or the panels that handles the access control. You will still be using the same existing readers. We still be using the same magnetic locks that are over at the dog park and at the pool. And you'd be using the basic wiring that's already laid into the ground. So we're just integrating a different means of introducing the software and housing the database where it does not have to impede upon you on a daily basis whenever you have to make changes, additions, or deletions to the system.
You have more? I'll keep this going if I may.
I've got stuff to talk about, but please do.
Oh.
I'm doing
I
some
think,
stuff.
I think we need some improvements at the pool.
Mhm.
But I'm, for some reason or other, I can't get to be excited about spending a lot of money on the dog park. The income that we get from that and the number of people who are using it, just in my mind, doesn't just justify spending any money on it, to tell you the truth. Please.
Are we on contract with ADT?
We are under contract for our security system and for the current system that's in place. if I'm not
Yeah, the
mistaken.
current system was actually a DEF-CON installed system. ADT had purchased DEF-CON about 2.5, 3 years ago, so we naturally inherited all that technology that was used back then, so technically, yes.
Okay, so, you know, my first thought was, why are we in such a bad state when we're under contract with ADT? Why is it being allowed to get like this? You're saying it's breaking down, is that what you're telling us?
Well, first of all, the computer at the pool is ours. It's not any hardware provided by our vendor. And
So what is the contract with ADT supposed to do for us then? I mean,
Actually, the contract that you have with ADT is not one that's binding you to pay us anything at all for your access control. It was purchased by, I guess, Gateway Services back
Okay.
7,
Through
8, 9 years,
DEF CON.
through DEF CON, many years ago.
Okay.
There's no exchange. I think DEF CON used to come and repair it from whatever logs I was able to obtain. But it was sold as a single system, standalone. Thank you very much, and here is the software, how to use it.
Here it is, yeah. So what's the maintenance contract? What are the provisions of this contract we have with ADT then?
I do not believe it has maintenance on that system.
What does it have?
I believe it was just a customer time and materials. If we wish to, if something happens to the system and you wish for us to come to take a look at it and try to repair it, we will at a cost. Basically, were a DEF-CON customer, just came over
Yeah.
when the purchase of DEF-CON was made by ADT.
Okay, well, there is lots of new technology out there. You're not the only vendor in this game, I'm sure you know that.
Oh, I'm sure I'm not.
There are 2 or 3 really good ones in Florida in addition to ADT. I personally don't feel like leaping in with one vendor without checking out the other 2. That would be my instant thought on this. This is an overhaul of our technology at the pool. It needs doing, I agree with Bill. It really needs doing, particularly if we've got actual manual, if it's a manual process right now, we've got to deal with it. But it doesn't mean to say we've got to leap into bed with one vendor.
The other thing it doesn't mean is, if we have a bad, physical, operation at the pool, the laptops are going away because of the humidity or whatever, and we need a new laptop at the pool, it's gonna go away too if we don't find a way to protect it, okay? And there are protection devices for laptops, so we ought to be including those in our considerations.
I agree. I think cloud-based technology, wireless, is the way to go. And I agree with the concept of what you're trying to do. I just think that we need to check out what's out there before we go headlong into this thing. There's other firms. I've spent years in unattended gas stations with card access technology, so I understand the game. And I'm sure you're a good firm, but I do think we owe it to ourselves to do a bit of due diligence before we just proceed forward on this quote.
Thank you very much.
Okay. One more point to your point, Mr. Chairman. Yes, you do need a computer to administer the system. However, that computer does not actually have to be at the pool. It could be at the administrator's house.
Yeah.
Because there's no software on it. It just reaches, as long as the passcodes and the passwords are correct, they'll be able to administer it from anywhere. But thank you very much for your time, and by all means, we will look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Scott, what issues are we having at the dog park?
Currently, the component that's there that's it's not out in the open, it's back in that electrical building on the corner by the fields. And, the hardware, we can't get it to connect to our laptop that we take down there occasionally to upload X number of cards, for the new members, new users. So, we'll go in and we'll upload, say, 20 cards at a time, and then have those ready for when people come in and sign up. So we have those cards ready. So fortunately, we have some cards that have been preloaded, and we're getting by with that right now. Meanwhile, it's still letting people come and go if their cards are active,
Okay.
but we don't have a record. It's not tracking.
I feel that we've perhaps left this in the air a little bit. Would it be appropriate to ask for Anthony to go out and check a couple of other vendors?
Well, I think that's a direction, sure.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
yes.
I'll help you, I'll
Very good,
help
thank
you,
you.
I'll help you all I can.
Okay,
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
all. Staff reports, Mr. Attorney, you're gonna talk to us about proposed amendments on our rules.
Yes, if you recall, the board discussed, I think Danny and Scott both brought to the board the concept of pre-qualifying various contractors, including those for lake maintenance activities, in order to have a qualified pool of contractors that we would provide bid proposals for advisement of upcoming projects based upon the experiences we had with some prior vendors. In reviewing the district rules, it doesn't really address the opportunity to utilize the pre-qualification for competitive solicitation requirements as we have to go out to bid. This is an initial draft of a proposed amendment to one of the sections of the rules that would indicate that the board may utilize this process, pre-qualify and send notices of the proposed project and request for proposals only to pre-qualified contractors. This begins, if the board wishes to, then I would, with Marilyn Murphy and Cal Teague's office, we'd place an ad in the paper. It's called Notice of Rule Development, which is just a short statement saying the district is in the process of developing a rule involving pre-qualification. I've already sent that to Marilyn. She's ready to hit the button to send it to the newspaper once we get the go-ahead. And then the board would hold a hearing, it has to be 28 days after the notice is in the paper, to consider adopting the proposed rule, and this proposed amendment would be available at the district manager's office and the district office. If the board's so inclined, we'd like to have authorization to advertise the notice of rule development and advertise the notice of a hearing, and I would suggest March 17th for the public hearing. That gives plenty of time for the paper, the notice to be in the paper, and to meet the 28 days. St. Patrick's Day, yes. I will use green paper for that particular agenda item that day, yes.
May I have a motion to approve the attorney's recommendation?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Yeah, okay, there's a motion and second to approve the attorney's recommendation. Are there any conversation? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Any,
As a follow-up, Mr. Tinkle is not here. He was kind enough to send me a link to the Gateway Greens website to review all their documents to see if there's an easier way to accept those easements, and I will be looking at that this weekend.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Engineer.
Okay, for the record, Danny Nelson with Tetra Tech District Engineer. One item on the agenda is the bringing back the Prado Plan and Plat. The memo that you have was recommending approval contingent upon 4 stipulations. And I will say, the first stipulation on there is a construction-related item. There's nothing we can do about that at this time. All other stipulations have been satisfied except for the performance and payments bonds, which I have personally not seen, but other than that, we're recommending to move forward with once that's received.
Please.
If I may, in addition to this, if you recall, there's 4 conditions that were added in there. One of them is a follow-up to the board discussion concerning downspouts and gutters. And I think that's item 3 on there. I'm not showing the
Yes.
page in front of me.
Yes.
And Danny and Tyler re-reviewing the permit criteria manual. Notice the language in there that would provide the opportunity for the district to require that because of the effect it would have on our system. And WCI has agreed to that as a condition on this project. In addition, if you recall, there were some requests to vacate 3 portions of the flowway easement. Mr. Caldwell had provided me the documents just before the last board meeting. I reviewed additional documents that were provided yesterday, and the forms of vacation of easements, the title work is fine, so we'd recommend that, if the board's so inclined, to authorize, the approval of this, the plans and plat for Prado with the conditions as indicated, and also authorize the chairman to sign 3 vacations of drainage easement. And the district to accept a grant of a new drainage easement that would take the place of a portion of the flowway as it's being reconfigured. And I think the engineers are all in agreement with that concept too.
Yeah, that's basically what I was saying.
You want to repeat it real fast or no?
No,
It
ditto.
would be to accept a grant of drainage easement and authorize execution of the 3 vacations of easement, and accept the recommendations of staff on the Prado plat and plan with the conditions.
Thank you. We'll have a recommendation, or a motion just as soon as we hear from Mr. Gephardt.
Bob Geppert, Pelican Preserve Ponds Group, and now I'm speaking on behalf of the ponds. One item that I sent out a note on today after reading all this, that I don't know if we covered it before, and I want to make sure it is covered. When we worked on the flowway this past year, it created a lot of turbulence and cloudy water. And the net result of all that was that the cloudy water inhibited our service provider's ability to kill the Lanafla and the hydrilla, because apparently you need clear water for this to work in combination with sunlight. So if in the Prado portion of our work, we know that we're going to be doing things to the flowway that may cause this turbidity again, I would like to have a caveat in there that if the turbidity is caused, and if this results in a bloom again on the flowway below where the work is being done, that the WCI be responsible to remove that aquatic growth.
As in WCI?
As in WCI. Now, last year, when we had the problem, and I explained it to Rhonda Brewer, and she came out and saw it, they stepped right up and paid for the removal. They did the right thing. However, when she said it, she said, I don't want to be called every year. This was one time without prejudice, and I accepted that because I knew the work was done. But now that I see that we're going to be back fully with the flowway, I want to make sure that we have some provision, because I don't want to go back to her again, because then that's, sounds deceitful when she paid for it once. But I'd like to be upfront about it, that if that occurs, we'd like to make sure we have some remedy.
Mr. Caldwell, do I see you sitting back there? Would you like, yes, would you like to
He's
come up?
waving yes to all those conditions.
Yeah, or is that waving?
This is late breaking for me, and I haven't covered it with anybody, other than the notes I sent to Scott and Dan.
Good evening, Board. Dave Caldwell, WCI for the record. I say that only because I think this is being recorded. Is that true?
It is.
So
It is.
you're, whoever transcribes this, then, who's that strange voice? He never comes here. In simple terms of, I have no problem with any of the conditions that you've heard. I'll just comment on them as to a few of those things. We are preparing a performance bond as required by, that the district wants, and it should be here certainly early next week. It's $5 million and change. As to the issue that the ponds brought up about the, I can't even pronounce that word.
Turbidity.
Turbidity.
Well, the turbidity, I understand. What's the thing?
It's turbidity, which means it's cloudy water.
No, but what's it called?
Oh, the plant.
Hydrilla and Lanafla. They're the two plants
Whatever that
was.
Yeah, it would be, obviously, the Prado does involve reconfiguring portions of the flowway. So we will no doubt create that kind of problem that we created last year when we were reconfiguring the flowway for another area. So if we cause a problem, we'll deal with it, and certainly we'll take care of that. I'm committing Mrs. Brewer to her prior commitment. She's my boss. And then, actually, most importantly, which wasn't raised specifically, I wasn't able to answer your question, Chairman Guy, last month as to gutters and downspouts. You caught me off guard on that. The company is committing to do gutters and downspouts connected to under drains for all of Prado, 334 homes. we're already doing it in Matarita 3 and 4, which was not an issue that came up prior discussions of this board, but we're doing it anyway. So I just wanted to let you know that, and I put it in the form of a letter. So that officially you have that.
Thank you.
But, and that's just
Thank you.
confirming what I said.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David. Are you finished with us or no?
Have I answered all your questions?
You have answered mine. Lady?
I have none.
I have none.
I just want to, if Gary was sitting here, I'm sure he'd be saying thank you for your sensitivity to gutters and downspouts, so I'll say it for him. I've just got a question about off-site construction costs, leading utilities and to that development. You know, water supply, potable irrigation, and lift stations, all that incremental cost. Are we responsible for any of that, or is it all under the CI? And I'm looking at impact fees, incremental cost on our part. That's my general question.
Well, let me put it this way. Actually, in Matarita 3, when we were constructing that about a year and a half ago, because we were going to be part of the Gateway Services District as to water and sewer and irrigation, we had to bring the services in from Gateway Boulevard. And those off-site structures, the pipe works, were all constructed for that community. They're in place, they're operational. We did it all at our expense. I think we turned over those facilities to you about a year ago, and the documentation's been given to the district. So it's not an expense to you, it's now one of your assets, that part of your system.
Okay, I just wanted to ask the obvious question and make sure.
Prado will be served off of that exact same system, so it's not like there's more off-site that will be built for Prado. Yes, if there's infrastructure needed to serve our community, we do it at our expense.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Attorney?
If it may just, I think if the board is inclined to approve the staff recommendation and the plans and plat for Prado, then additional condition be imposed that the developer be responsible for all costs associated with any remedial activities relating to work in the flowway, which covers the turbidity issue and everything else.
You think you're thinking that this letter was too specific?
I think the letter was just gutters. Okay.
Yeah.
That's just on gutters.
Oh.
On that subject, Dave.
I see what you're saying.
On the issue that Mr. Gephardt brought up, and that David has committed WCF, I think it needs to be in the approval.
In our approval or in a written approval by him?
In our approval, because it becomes a condition of our approval.
David, are you okay with that?
Oh, sure. I said it earlier. If we cause a problem through our construction activities for Prado, we'll remedy it. We have no intention of trying to create a problem, but sometimes these things happen.
You did the right thing last year.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen,
There was one thing. David, prepaid connection fees. We owe you a bunch of connection fees still in our accounts. We've got there's $618,000 in the balance sheet. So I presume that's all going to that'll take care of this new development. Do you know how many
What's a
connections?
connection fee with 334 homes?
That's
It's-
about it. That's
it's-
about $618,000, so.
And then the cookie jar will be empty?
That's where I'm heading, yeah. So what's a connection fee roughly now? Do you happen to know the number? Says it,
2,200 or something, $1,800?
Yeah.
if I say it's $2,000 down 600,000, that's 300 connections. So
And then
we're
there's
getting
another
there.
follow-up subdivision after Prato called Pastoria. It may use up the balance of it. Somewhere it'll all get used up.
Okay, thank you.
ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the recommendation of the attorney together with his verbal additions. Is there a motion for approval?
Make a motion for approval with conditions.
Second.
Any further questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0. Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Thank you, David.
Thank you, board. The plat is here,
It's for,
special pen,
is that problem?
and those are the easement
Oh,
documents.
thanks, David. Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Engineer, I'm not gonna let you off with just that. You know,
Would you like me to talk about ponds?
I would.
Yes.
Okay.
Had the same thought.
Well, Mr. Senior had pointed out earlier, we've had some rains, which is a good thing. Kind of wish it stopped a little bit, but we're going through the process of pre-qualification. We received the surveying for the next set of lake bank improvements or pond bank improvements, so we're moving forward with the design. However, we're in a condition, and also I'm hopeful at the next meeting we'll bring the facilities plan before you as well. So all of that will be moving into place, but the rains have given a condition that's unique to us in this time of year, and that is it'll be difficult to work on the banks, and maybe to the point where, you know, we get everything done, we get it in place, but it may be to our advantage to hold off, which isn't a bad thing. It's actually could be a good thing that we can kind of make sure we're good with the way we're going. I tell you, I've been out and I've looked at the banks of what we've done, and they're looking really, really good. In fact, I was behind Harley's house, and that's now been in place for about a year, close to a year, and it's holding up well. So I just want to let you know where we're at is we're pressing forward. You know, however, just keep that in mind that we don't want to rush putting something out to bid and forcing contractors to do work when the lake levels are, or the pond levels are as high as they are, which again, I don't see that as a bad thing. That could be a blessing, and that we can then focus on that. We can move into the fall and possibly do more. It allows us to get the funding in place and you know, hit the ground running in the fall when things do lower. There's definitely a chance that, you know, if the rains stop, that we could do something, but we really don't have much of a window, because if we're looking at a month to 2 months to do each one, if the rains stop today, it will probably be close to June before they recede, and then guess what? The rains start again.
And we've got rain today, and I think in 3 or 4 days we got
Through
rain
this
again.
weekend, yes.
So it's, I know the lakes in Stony Brook are up as
And
high as they were
right.
in the middle of.
And with it being an El Nino period, it's gonna be too hard to predict, but I would anticipate we're gonna see some rain for some time. What that also does is that, you know, we depend on the dry season for our water levels to go down, and if we're saturated now, like I said, if it were to stop, by the time they would be to the point that it would normally be, you know, low in May or June, we're starting right back over again. So just want to bring that to the board's attention. I see it as a positive thing. We'll press forward. It'll give us time to get, you know, vendors pre-qualified. You know, we don't know what that process is going to hold. We may not, you know, we may want to go through that process again if we don't get the vendors that we want or enough vendors. So it just gives us a little bit more time to kind of slow things down a little bit. It's a lot of money, a lot of effort. So just to kind of, you know, think about it a little bit.
How long do you think the pre-qualification is gonna take? When do you think, if you get enough people to respond, when do you think that will be complete?
I'm not sure the date of when they'll actually come in, but I would, once we receive them, I would probably say, you know, 30 days to bring that to the board. Simply, it gives us time to review them, to make phone calls, check references, go through everything, and then bring a recommendation to the board. So I would probably say I would give it, you know, 30 days. So I think they're due to come in.
What's the bid deadline? on the pre-qualification?
It's this month, I'm not sure of the date, so I would probably be thinking either the second meeting in March or probably the first meeting in April.
You don't have rules that would provide for that.
Well, that would be, yeah, that would be
Which is
contingent
March
upon.
17th.
For the rule.
Oh.
But what we can do, we can give it the advertising process after. maybe,
Right, yes,
To coordinate all that, make sure we have everything in place.
yeah,
Follow.
right.
Right.
So it would be after that, sorry.
So we're looking at April
Yes.
and May before we even have pre-qualified vendors in place.
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions for our engineer?
I think slowing things down is a good idea. It's okay with me too. Not just from the pre-qualification point of view, SRF loan, possibility of a state grant, and get our funds together.
Yes.
And I think that's okay. And I'd like to see 106, 7, and 8, mature out a little bit, lower the water levels and see what we've got.
It also gives us that point where we, still want to get Lee County out there, but again, with the
Exactly.
levels where they've
You
been.
can't show them anything.
Right,
So if you can't show them anything, how do we know it's looking okay?
right.
No, I'm asking you.
Oh, well, maybe then we should have them come out now.
Thank you.
He agrees with your question.
Thank you, Danny.
Yeah. Quick question for Tony. Is there a problem with starting the process and going ahead and getting, not bids, but starting to get the
We may want to hold off on the
qualifications?
notice going out until we get that rule in place, yeah.
Okay. I see some people biting at the bit.
I understand.
Mr. Manager, you're up.
Yes, since the last meeting, and you'll recall, this was when Scott's resignation was announced, we talked about organizational restructuring and doing some analysis of the staff and how we could improve operations and what's the best approach. We had an opportunity with two of the key department heads now all three of the top three department heads resigning, and moving forward, let's look at opportunities if they're there and where we're gonna go. I had a lot of email from one of the supervisors suggesting and pushing us in a particular direction. And, we've identified what are the type of efforts that we could do to meet that task that he identified. But what I'd really like to do is just hold everything off, and then as a board, you're gonna sit down and we're going to analyze. But there's just a lot of things that are still going on, and just to throw something into the mix right now, I don't think is the best route to go.
Board member?
I'd like to, and this is for Margaret's benefit, because Margaret, you weren't at the last board meeting, and
That's
we
correct.
had a really good workshop on, I thought we did anyway, on the organisation. And what was proposed, at least what was determined at that time we would do, because we have this, we have an unsettled process going on here, because Scott's going to be leaving us. We have a new utility billing manager who's settling in, and we have a problem with succession in terms of, we've got to consider all of the things that have got to happen between now and when we have a new person coming on board. Okay, we have the utility manager, and I asked if we could delay that process until we'd had that workshop, because I wanted to be sure that the qualifications that we were looking for in that person, not just equip them to be a utility manager, but could be allow them to be something greater than that in the future. In other words, a general manager type role. And what we decided at that workshop as a group is that we had to give Cal we had to give him the freedom, which is under his contract, to replace Scott. That's what has to be done. I was ready to make the motion to have Scott employed by the district. That's something that's been on my mind. We've had that discussion many times, but it didn't work out that way because Scott's leaving. So what we have to do is to now say, okay, what have we got? Severn Trent has the responsibility to bring in a replacement, which is what Cal's doing, and I'm sure he'll be talking about that shortly. And the agreement was to take a 90-day position on that. Let's steady the ship. Let's have someone coming in for 90 days that's part of Severn Trent, that's got Cal's obligations built into it as under contract. What we then need to do as a board, I think, is to say, okay, we've got a utility manager. Let's make sure that utility manager that we hire has got the skills and experience to be something a little bit greater than that in the future, like a succession planning. On the other side of the organisation chart, we have the public works, which is everything but utilities, in landscaping, ponds, and parks and rec, principally. And we felt, at least I made the point that we need a public works person on board in good time, not now, necessarily right now, but looking beyond this 90 days, so we have two responsible managers, one for the utility and one for the public works. And either of those two people would have the ability to become a general manager, or effectively both be assistant general manager and could double up in that role. And either of them could proceed to the general manager job that could potentially be employed by the district. So that's where we're at in the workshop that you weren't at, and I thought it was worth letting you know that.
Can we invite the manager to tell us where he is in providing a new 90-day
Well,
replacement?
there's two questions there from Mr. Senior's summary. One is, as we agreed and discussed, this would be a minimum of 90 days. I had to give assurances to an employee to take a position for at least a certain amount of time. But it could go beyond that. That's up to the board where you're at and what, how you want to restructure everything. That person starts Monday. They'll work a full week with Scott, and we should be up and running, and everything should be fine at that time. Scott's been preparing everything so that he can take that week and hand off. As far as the utility director, or manager, I want to get away from the word director. We have broken it down to 7 applicants. One is an internal applicant, and the other 6 are external. 2 of the other 6 are PEs in civil engineering. The other 5 have extensive experience in utility management. So, all are very good candidates. I've only met one, which is the internal candidate, and the other 6 I have not met, but on paper, they're very strong. The plan is to hopefully start, if we can put it together, to start interviewing next week while Scott's still here so that we could get his expertise. Other than that, the board needs to set some time aside for a workshop so that we can start looking at how this baby is going to be developed and grow into a
Mature individual.
mature
Agreed.
And I
individual.
guess
Give
that's
us-
a sooner
give us
rather
the-
than later.
Give us the name of the new 90-day operation.
April White, she has, you know, she has a degree, she is a CPA, she's a certified district manager, and is from this area.
And she's starting on Monday?
She's starting on Monday, yes.
Thank you.
5:30 a.m.
I'm in favor of a workshop whenever everybody is prepared to do that.
Questions for the manager?
How much time do we need for a workshop, you think? Since you know how far you got down the road at the last workshop, that was an hour, are we looking at another hour?
I would
or-
say.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
think.
I don't want a workshop until we get just a
Yeah.
touch of
Right, yeah.
solidity into this thing.
I agree. You don't want to set a date now, but I think that we've been doing the workshops an hour before the meeting. Maybe we could, even a Saturday, set aside time where it's, well, someday, whatever day you want, but let's not hinder ourselves to just an hour. Let's give
Okay.
ourselves enough time to where you feel fulfilled and all questions, every consideration's been discussed, and
Yeah.
I mean, there might be other things that you might wanna discuss as far as team building also.
Well, the reason I was thinking of like setting a date in March is I was assuming that we would want to do this in the 90-day
Yes.
timeframe.
Mhm.
So I didn't, if,
Yeah.
if everybody wants to wait, I was thinking
And
it
the
might be.
90-day is not a critical issue. When 90 days comes, it's not gonna go away. It can be extended. So you've got
Alright.
plenty of time to design and develop what you need. And
I agree with Bill, we don't need to set a date today, but on the other hand, I don't want 90 days to evolve, and we haven't.
Exactly.
We haven't had this Camp David sort of workshop, and I think we need it, I agree with you.
Yeah.
And I'm okay, whatever suits my colleagues.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Manager. Next item is financials.
Stephen is, can you call him? You've got a phone or something here, right, that you tie people into?
I have his cell number.
Do you have it?
I'll look.
I got it if you. Okay, if you're ready to, it's
Oh, yes,
954?
One moment.
Okay.
954.
703 9364.
Sorry. Can you tell us what page, can you tell us what page you want to start on your question?
Yes, I've got all that here, yes. 127.
This is Stephen.
Hi, Stephen, it's Scott Connell with Gateway.
Hi, Scott. How are you?
Good, good. We've got you live at the board meeting. We've gotten to the financial section, and we'll turn it over.
Okay.
Thank you, Stephen. I believe that Mr. Senior has a question on page 127 of the agenda, which is the statement of revenues, expenditures, et cetera, for the capital projects fund of the general.
Hi, Stephen.
Okay.
Hi, this is.
I'm there.
Hi, Stephen, this is Rod. Page
Rod.
120, are you there on 127?
I'm on that page.
Okay, roadway services, 3/4 of the way down.
Okay.
We're up at 102,000 and 25,000 for those two items with nothing budgeted. How do we deal with that from a capital allocation point of view? Do we have to, does the board need to act to allocate some funds to these things?
Yes, you will. As a matter of fact, if you look, I don't want to skip too far ahead for you, but if you look at the capital project pages that were included in the supporting schedules, it's on it starts on page 140, and then it goes to 141 and 142. We have marked up next to each project where we feel that based on what's currently budgeted, what has been spent, what has been committed, and what has been planned, where we feel that the board will eventually need to amend the budget to allow for that spending.
Yeah, those are items with a number 4 next to them on page 141.
Yeah.
Correct.
So those are the items that we have to address. How quickly do we have to address that?
Technically, you wouldn't have to do it until 60 days after fiscal year end, but I would recommend that as soon as everybody is comfortable with what projects will be done this year, that we have that discussion, or sooner than later,
Okay,
so
thank
that
you.
the board is comfortable with where the reserves are going. And I don't want anybody to be surprised at the end of the year.
Exactly, and that's where my head is at. On page 140, for example, if you can go to that, Stephen.
Okay?
This is the fixed asset reserve, which this is something that we've hammered away at for 12 months now between us all. And it was only last year that we were looking at a projected ending balance for the general fund of negative 120,000. That's, you know.
Right.
And now, that concerned me, as you know. And now we're looking at this page 140, and it's showing a beginning reserve balance of 2.2 million. So that's a
Well,
huge,
that,
that's a
yeah.
transformation.
Well, and basically what that represents is the Lake Bank Restoration Project and kind of where it's at, or where it's, you know, hasn't gone in terms of spending.
Okay, we just haven't
It-
spent the money, right. Okay, so page 140 is making us look a whole lot better in our fixed asset reserve by the end of this fiscal year of 1.8 million.
And what that means is that, you know, that is really tied to what has been committed as of right now. You know, so if the board decides, you know what, we are going to spend $500,000 of the Lake Bank restoration this year, and we're not going to proceed with a state revolving loan, then, you know, that's when those numbers are going to start to change. That's why we're kind of tracking, you know, this a little bit separately so that we can see the two numbers.
Okay, thanks. I've got some more stuff, but I'd rather ask the others if they...
Well, Pam, do you have questions on the financial side?
Not yet,
Margaret?
no.
I don't have a question, but I want to bring, because the question that I asked, I'd asked of Tony earlier, so he was going to give
I'm
me
doing the
an
research on that,
answer.
yes.
I just wanted to, when we were talking about the Griffin Drive, street lighting, in here it said that the budget was 160, of which 188 had already been spent. But if you look at page 141, we've got 160 budgeted, and this says 199 had been spent, and another 6247 was committed to be spent. And that brings the total project so far to 205, well, really $206,000 over the 160 that was actually budgeted. So I just wanted to bring everyone's attention to that, because we're gonna be revisiting that Griffin Drive street lighting, and that's like way over budget. That's even farther over budget than I thought we were.
Yeah, it is.
Farther over budget than I thought.
It is.
That's the
And
only-
what we've tried to do is combine some of that year-to-date, that number is both years. That's project year-to-date.
Okay.
Yeah, 15 and 16, right? Stephen, what I would welcome when, at a future meeting, when you're here, is to devote a bit of time to the enterprise fund and general fund capital budget. We've talked about the enterprise fund before, and you said that you're going to be getting involved in reallocating some funds to that capital budget, because we've got a lot of capital work to do, right?
Correct.
And I was wondering, I just think I would welcome a discussion on this whole capital budget on both the enterprise fund and the general fund and allocate a bit of time to it. Because
Okay.
there's quite a bit involved.
Not a problem. I hate to say this, but it is approaching, we're in February now, so we're actually not too far away from starting the budget process again.
Can you go to page 112, please, Stephen?
Sure.
You there?
Okay, I'm there.
Top number, we've got $1.1 million in the bank. We only spend $1.1 million in 3 months in the enterprise fund. So why do we need 3 months of money in the bank? Why can't we put it on interest? Is it necessary to have $1.1 million in the checking account?
No, it's not. We've been moving as much as we can. My guess is that's a timing issue in terms of when cash comes in the door. Because if you notice, for all of the funds, we've been trying to keep it
Yes,
very low.
you are.
Yeah,
I know
I'll
you
check
are.
on that to find out, but my guess is that it was just the timing of when the money came in. If it came in, right at the end of the month with the holidays and stuff, they probably didn't transfer over until January.
Okay, that's all I've got. Thanks, Stephen.
Right. Ladies, anything else for Mr. Bloom? No? Thank you, Steve.
No problem. Glad to help.
Okay, we're finished with the financials and ready for supervisor comments. Pam?
I just have one comment. I don't know if this is a comment or request.
Just hit the little phone symbol. Thank you.
Pam, you had one comment.
Well,
Is that-
yeah,
My ear was right.
I was wondering, how did we go so far over budget? Is there a way we can get a breakdown on how we went so far over budget on the Griffin Drive project?
Yes, there is a breakdown, and we'll send that out to you. It, again, it had to do with those 3 crossings that were done earlier, in 2014, I believe it was, and then, the pathway that was done in 15, so we'll get you a breakdown.
Okay.
Margaret?
My questions were answered in the course of conversations at different times during the meeting.
Thank you, Margaret.
One item, and it's the fallout from the discussion we had at the beginning of the meeting on landscaping and mainscape. And I'm feeling that the Landscape Advisory Committee, I think we need to make sure that we're all on the same page, that we know what that committee is supposed to be doing. I don't think it's fair to lean on that committee and say, well, they're supposed to be giving guidelines to Mainscape. I don't think they are.
No.
And I think it would be a good thing for us to revisit or have somebody. I notice it's not even on the agenda today, a feedback. I know that Bill Pricey, who is the land architects guy who we voted on, he wasn't even at the Landscape Advisory Committee at the last meeting. And they only meet once a month, right?
That's correct. He
And-
was
and
unavailable.
That concerns me.
He was scheduled, but he got held up in a public hearing.
No problem.
And he is, I'm meeting with him in the morning, and he's coming to the next meeting.
Great. I'm just saying, the Landscape Advisory Committee meets once a month for 1 hour. And I just didn't want us to go into the situation where that decision was slowing this whole thing down. And I understand from Bill that it's not, I'd like a little bit, I don't feel that the landscaping's moving along as quickly as it should. And it's just a sense that I have, and I don't know what, we need to figure out why, and who's gonna drive it. And is that gonna be the Landscape Advisory Committee, or is it the district, or is it Bill Pricey himself? Who's gonna set the time frame at which we're gonna move forward and develop? We've only got so much budget for starters. We've only got 25,000, which I know is not gonna deal with the master plan. It'll be a module of it. The question is, who's gonna drive us to the first base? Is it gonna be the district, or is it the landscape committee, or is it the vendor?
What is your definition of first base?
Well,
Help me clarify that.
Deciding how we're gonna spend the first $25,000 that's been allocated to the master plan.
A combination of all
We're,
three.
we're working on that scope right now. In a nutshell, he's gonna be doing part of that program is to do an inventory. Then he's gonna, there's 3 steps mainly, and it all involves the board with presentations with the landscape committee and the board.
Okay.
I think there's 3 separate presentations that's gonna go through there, and again, that's why we're meeting tomorrow, to refine the scope.
Great.
Uh,
Okay.
But that's the process. So that's the 25,000, and we have, and then there's 50,000 for plant replacement for the year, and we have ongoing projects on that as well. So there's not a lot of money in the budget right now to do major enhancement, and
Right.
we're doing it as needed, and hopefully in the next budget, we'll be able to put in going to implement what the conceptual plans are that we get this year, and then moving forward, going enacting the working drawings, and at the same time, put money in for the implementation of new plantings.
Right. Do you think the Landscape Advisory Committee feels that it's their role, not just the master plan and the, you know, raising the bar, like the whole idea of the whole thing? I'm talking about improving the landscaping that we have on a general maintenance basis. That's specified in the contract. Does the Landscape Advisory Committee feel that that's their responsibility as well?
I think they'll take anything that's brought to them, but I would like to go back and see what the charter was, if you will,
Exactly, that's what I'm.
that was
heading.
defined. Now, the chair has changed, Paul has
Yes.
resigned, and Mr. Schultz is in charge now.
I'm sorry.
Is
who's
the
in
chairman?
charge? Who- who-
JB Shute.
Shoots, I always get his name wrong. JB Shoots?
Maybe shoots.
JB Shoots. So he just took over at the last meeting.
Okay.
He does all the landscaping
So,
for the city of Fort Myers, so
to-
he heads that department.
If I understand your question, I believe that they are charged with, again, the conceptual, overseeing that and the improvements that are required with that, and then other tasks that are brought to them, be it irrigation controllers or nematodes about the soccer field. You know, I think they're willing to take on anything, and we talk about daily issues and common issues with them. Elle brings that up to them.
And if the current contract with Mainscape doesn't stretch to improving Gateway Boulevard like George Hurstcamp was talking about with all that mulch and stuff, it looks pretty cheap. Does our contract restrict what Mainscape can do? And if, or would the Landscape Advisory Committee would be coming back to us saying, hey, look, it needs to be funded, it needs more money to be able to make an improvement?
If I understand it correctly, the Mainscape agreement is for maintenance, not enhancement.
Correct.
Those are special projects.
But if the maintenance doesn't look very good, how do we go about making it look better?
We need to address that one-on-one, and I'll make sure Elle gets word to them.
Okay, thanks.
I understand.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to adjourn.
So
That-
moved.
I just, this is Scott's last meeting,
Oh,
and,
yes.
I know he's enjoyed it, I've certainly enjoyed, I'll tell him later, but, he's still got another week put up with
Sorry,
me.
I did mean to address that. I wanted to say
Sorry,
thank you to
Scott.
Scott. Forgot this was your last meeting. I keep thinking maybe he'll change his mind, but I know he won't.
Well, thank you all very much, and I do thank you for the honor of serving and working with you all. I've enjoyed it. I like, you know, all the, you know, the little nuts and bolts and things. It's just, the time, I've learned a lot, and I wish you all the best. And
We wish you the
you've
best.
got a good team here, a good staff, and they're dedicated. They've been here longer than I. And, you know, the residents, it's coming together. You've got to take one bite of the elephant at a time to get there. So, again, I thank you.
Thank you for your service, Scott.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned.
I'm gonna give him a hand for doing it.
Now Scott will blush.
I'm glad Cal said something, because I remembered it and then forgot it.
I gave him best wishes last meeting.
Oh.
Yeah,